Stitchers, I hope this video finds you all well. I thought it was about time I did an update for my February thread challenge project, Operation Threadpawn. But before I get into those bits and pieces, I thought I would start off those two projects. I thought I would start off by showing you my Mirabilia finish for the stitch along. As a lot of you know already, I finished red on the 14th of February. I don't think I posted a full picture of her up on Instagram, but there is on my Flickr account and on my blog there's a finished picture of her, so not all of you might have seen her, so I thought I would show her. So here she is, all done. Just to recap, the fabric I used was Belfast linen from Crafted Kitten in Winter Skies. I used all the recommended threads and silks and beads, and I stitched her face over one using full crosses, so that's a little close-up of her skin there. I know some of you have chosen to do over one skin and other people have done over two skin. It really doesn't matter, it's, you know, what you're happy with, because it's, you know, you're stitching it, it's your project. So that's that one. I don't know what to say about this project really. I'm of course well aware that some of you are still stitching your Mirabilias and you love them and you love Mirabilia designs. It's probably no secret after my last video and things I said on my blog that I'm not entirely sold on Mirabilia designs. I know some people have already said about the charts and how, you know, awkward they are to read. I guess in this age of PDF charts, we're kind of used to that now, everything being a lot clearer to read. But I do find, you know, I really do dislike paper charts now. When I stitched this one, I actually scanned the chart and converted it into a PDF file so I could stitch from my iPad, so I was still able to enlarge parts and see things clearly. So the charts aren't super brilliant. I know in my last video I was whinging a bit about this project. I must say though, when I added the beads, there weren't that many beads on her, I don't think. I guess it depends on how many beads you're used to adding onto your projects. But like the beads, you know, going down her cape and on her dress, you know, there's a few beads. I must say, when I added those beads, I thought the project was a lot better, you know, it sort of came alive when I added the beads. So then I thought, oh, maybe I've, you know, misjudged this project, and actually, you know, she's perfectly fine after all, because once I'd finished her completely, I actually felt better about it. But then when I stopped and thought about it, something didn't really sit right with me. The fact that by adding just one element, just the beads, made the design better. It shouldn't, for my money, it shouldn't be like that. It should be a combination of all the elements of a design that come together and make it, you know, fantastic. Quite often I compare things to chatelaines, which probably doesn't do a lot for the other designs. But with chatelaines, for example, you can stitch them in DMC and they still look beautiful. You don't necessarily have to add beads, you could use metallics instead and they still look beautiful. You can stitch them on Ada and they still look beautiful. Because at the end of the day, it's the design, it's the actual design that stands out, regardless of the material you use. And I think that's what I was thinking about after I'd finished this one, that it shouldn't take just adding the beads to make the project look better. It should be a combination of all those elements coming together, which make you look at the design and think, oh, that's amazing, and I really enjoyed stitching it. Because to be honest, as probably most of you know, I didn't necessarily particularly enjoy stitching this design. There's nothing wrong with it, I just think maybe my tastes have changed. But I don't necessarily think that's the case, because the odd thing that I couldn't quite understand when I thought about it, and I thought, no, I'm probably not going to stitch another Mirabilia again. The weird thing was that I can totally see myself stitching another Joan Elliott lady, which sounds, I can't even work that out, it seems to make no sense to me, but there's something about her ladies and her designs that appealed to me much more than Mirabilia's. I think after a while, stitching Mirabilia's, once you've stitched one, you kind of stitched all of them. Maybe some people feel that way about Joan Elliott designs, her ladies, I don't know. But I can still see myself stitching, you know, her Cinderella, what have I got? Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty and Rapunzel, and I've got some of our historical ladies to do. I can totally see myself stitching those, you know, and they're this, you know, similar. They don't use any silks, but they, you know, just use DMC, metallics and beads. Very similar pattern. But for some reason I can see myself stitching those, but not any more Mirabilias. So that's kind of a bit of a mystery that I really don't understand myself. And, you know, maybe some of you out there think completely the opposite and you can stitch Mirabilias all day. But yeah, I don't think I could do that. But I am, you know, I am happy. I'm not, I'm glad I stitched her because now I know what I know. I'm not necessarily disappointed in the project, maybe it's just expectations. I've just kind of moved on. I do think she's still pretty, but I guess I've just stitched more enjoyable things, put it that way. So anyway, she's finished. So as with all the other rest of my finishes, she's been rolled up in my finish drawer since I finished her. So there you go, think of that what you will. Anyway, so that's that one. So I thought I'd better show you a full picture of her so you can see that she's done. Now I shall move on to my thread challenge projects for the month. So as you know, I'm stitching a freebie project every month which has to be finished, and I'm stitching a Hardanger square which doesn't have to be finished in any way, it just has to be stitched from Mabel Figworthy's Song of the Weather Stitch Along, which started and finished in 2013, except I didn't stitch all of them, so I am redoing that in a view to using as many of my hand dyed thread as possible. So here first of all is the Hardanger little design that I did, and that's it. You would have seen this on my blog or on my Instagram feed. It's quite a quick stitch, you know, it only takes sort of an afternoon or an evening, because stitching, I always find stitching the cloister blocks, those little blocks going around the outside, you know, sort of quite relaxing, although it is still very easy to miscount. You can find yourself, if you don't concentrate, if you think, oh, this is really easy and you're rattling along, you can quite often make mistakes. But anyway, so in that one, those are the little dove's eyes stitches and filling stitches there, which used to be my sort of Hardanger nemesis, but I think I've done enough of them now to know what I'm doing. It's just that initial, it's like, I sort of compare it to how stitches feel about French knots, you know, when you've just started stitching, or even people that have been stitching for years absolutely hate doing them because they just remember what a nightmare it was every time they try and do them, because for whatever reason sometimes some stitches take longer to sort of click than others do, and it was the same for me with dove's eyes, so I still have the memory of not being able to do them when actually I can do them now, so I don't know why I fuss about it. But the other speciality stitch in this one is this pink, it's one in the pink thread here, and it's called beaded edging, except with this particular version in this chart there's no beads on it. But it's a stitch, I kind of have my own terms for these type of stitches, and I know I've spoken about them before. I kind of call them looped stitches because basically all the work is done on the front of the fabric and not on the back. If you looked at the back of the, well, I'll show you the back, here's the back. That's the loop stitch there, and you'll see on the back of the fabric all you see is a vertical line, so it actually gives no indication to what the stitch looks like on the front, because on the front basically how the stitch is made is by wrapping the thread around the needle, passing it under and over threads that are have already been worked on the fabric, so they rely an awful lot on having the correct tension. So if you pull too tightly, it alters the look of the stitch, and you're trying, you know, the object is to obviously get them to look as uniform as possible. So any stitches that involve, you know, working on the front of the fabric, relying upon your tension, I really hate those. Dove's eyes are similar, you know, the loops. If you alter your tension, they, you know, look all different sizes, so it just, I suppose it's good for me because you have to be patient. I'm not very good at that. But yeah, so I enjoyed, this is the second time I've stitched this design, and my stitching has improved, I think, because this beaded edging looks a lot better on this one than it did on my first one. So that's that one. This is February. I chose these colours because to me they kind of represented February. There's still a bit of blue in there because February's still cold over here, but then it's got sort of floral elements with the pink and the yellow, because this time of year, you know, we have daffodils over here and primroses and other sort of spring flowers start coming up. So I thought that sort of felt February-ish to me. And as I did a lot of blue in January last month, I didn't want to put too much blue in this one, because although February's cold, it's starting to get a bit better. Although today, obviously now it's March and it's miserable outside, but there you go, that's English weather for you. So that's that one, and there's some little Delica beads that I used from my stash. Obviously all of these are stitched from my stash. These are the two watercolours I used, Karen watercolours. This one's Baby's Breath, that's the Cloister Blocks in the middle. And this one is Apple Blossom. Oops. So you probably see the colours a bit better there. Yep, so that's that one. And my freebie project for the month, again, has already been up on Instagram and on my blog. I was really looking forward to stitching this one. For ages I wanted to stitch it, but because my mind was focused on Heaven and Earth Designs, or Chatelaines, or other projects that I wanted to stitch last year, freebie projects, although they're totally worthy of having a place in anybody's sort of stitching rotation or stitching plans, they just kind of got pushed to one side. So that's, part of the reason, as you know, why I set myself this little thread challenge. So I was so pleased that I got to stitch this one, and I just really enjoyed it, totally enjoyed stitching it. It only took a few days to stitch, but it was quite satisfying because there's so many different sort of elements in it. So it's called Tree of Hope. It was originally a stitch along on Olga Maxton's blog, and I just collected the parts. It's still available if anybody wants to, find it and stitch it. I'll put all the links below. Olga Maxton was the blogger that put up the design of the little small heart that I did in December, so it's the same designer. But here it is finished. I finished it into a cushion. I just made I made a sort of a cushion insert out of some random fabric I had lying around, and then the way I made this cushion, just basically make a tube. So you only sew down that side and that side of your backing fabric and your stitch piece. Obviously put the cushion pad in the middle, and then I just fastened some ribbon onto the top and bottom edges using some buttons, and then just tie the ribbons together and it holds it in. So it's quite simple, I don't do anything difficult. And that's the backing fabric. It's some sort of moda fabric, just stuff I had in my stash. So all even as well as the threads being from my stash, even the fabric and trims are also from my stash, because it's about time it got used up. But I don't know how clearly you can see the different stitches on there. There's eyelets, obviously satin stitches, there's some herringbone stitch. This is a sort of rose sort of variation, a bit like a butterfly but not butterfly shape. Then there's these sort of leaf shaped stitches which are sort of formed in the same way that you form a Jessica stitch. What's down here? Smyrna stitches, little star stitches at the bottom, bits of cross stitch, and then for the trunk of the tree, again there's some eyelets, and down the centre there's star stitches and tied windmill stitches. But my favourite stitch to do, and I just really love the way they came out on this, especially with the thread that I was using, are these spiderweb roses here. I don't know how clearly you can see them. And obviously there's lazy daisies and French knots in there as well. I just really love the way they came out, especially with the variegated thread. Now the threads I used for this one, it's only 3 colours. Obviously the brown for the tree trunk, the sort of variegated green for the foliage, and the spiderweb roses, and some of the leaves. I used obviously another colour. But again, I must have been on some sort of Karen fix, because I used wildflower. This is a wildflower thread. This is a thread it's coming up more blue there, but it's green. Definitely green, it's a completely different colour. The reason why I chose to use this thread, obviously it's slightly thicker than strand of DMC. It's the equivalent to sort of a number 8, in between a number 8 and a number 12 pearl. So it's really good, and I know I've said it hundreds of times before, but when you're doing a design with a lot of speciality stitches like this one, it means that you only need to use 1 strand. So when you're getting your thread to lay properly, sometimes when you have 2 strands it gets really annoying to make sure they both lay parallel and they lay flat, you know, you're railroading your stitches or using a laying tool or something, but you don't have to worry about that obviously when you're using a sort of pearl equivalent thread. So it just makes it fuller, a fuller stitch without the hassle of wrestling with the thread. So that's why I chose to use those threads, and also, you know, I just really love the colours. So that's Celadon, number 67 in Wildflowers, which is not representative of the colour. Oh, funny, because this one comes up the right shade. This one is Potpourri number 56, so that's the colour I used, because the green through this matched the green of the Celadon, so that's sort of why I used it. And the tree trunk thread is actually a Needle Necessities thread, ink thread. But this is an old thread, they've obviously been taken over by Threadworks, so now it is Threadworks 1028 in wet clay. That's the colour I used, and that's actually coming up near enough right. So those are the threads I use in that project. The other thing I added in this project, obviously there's beads on there as well. There's 2 colours of beads, 3 colours actually. In the end I used, funnily enough, I used Mill Hill beads, which is odd because normally if I need beads I go straight for the Delicas. But for some, I had better colours in the Mill Hill beads, and I couldn't use Delica beads and Mill Hill beads in the same project because they're different shapes and it would just irritate me, so I just stuck with Mill Hill beads. The greenish sort of beads, those beads there, are actually leftovers from red. I think they were Shimmering Seas as the colour. But the other thing I found in my stash, which I knew I had, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to use them, are these little flower sequins in like a green and sort of crystal white colour. And then I just obviously thread a bead on top of them to secure them. But I thought, you know, they looked quite good, and following Mackenzie's example, using sequins, I thought, well, I'll add those in. So I'm glad I remembered I had those, because I'm finding it quite good to stitch from my stash. I find there's a greater sort of sense of achievement in my stitching. So that is that one. And I stitched it on blue Jobelan, however you want to say it. That was actually part of the pieces that Patty gave me last year, so I was really glad that I was able to use some of that fabric in a project. And so yeah, that's that one. I was really pleased with the finish, and I loved, as I said, I love stitching it. And so if any of you like me like stitching, you know, speciality stitches, picking your own threads, colours for patterns, then I would definitely recommend going on to Olga Maxton's blog, because there's so many patterns on there. I mean, the blog's in Russian, I think, but obviously a pattern is a pattern. It doesn't really matter what language the blog's in. Stitching's kind of universal really, and there are stitch diagrams for all the speciality stitches, so even if you're not familiar with them, there's a diagram to help you out. So I mean, anybody can stitch that from a diagram. So yeah, that's that one. So those are my 2 thread challenge projects for the month. So that's kind of all I've got to sort of show you on that front. As some of you already know, I've set up a cross stitch, well, it's not a cross stitch blog, it's just a stitching blog, and I will put the link below if any of you want to go and have a look about what I've been doing and what I'm going to be doing. That's absolutely fine. I know not everybody's into blogs. I will say I'm not quite sure when I'll be putting up my next stitching video. I'm kind of at a bit of a loss at the moment when it comes to videos. I feel that I have said everything I want to say and talked about everything. I think because I am chronicling my stitching through my blog and I'm enjoying doing that, videos seem a bit sort of rendered a bit moot really, because everything I would talk about in a video I've already said in my blog, so I feel like I'm repeating myself, which isn't very exciting for me, and it's not very exciting for you either. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing with my FlossTube channel. It's not that I don't want to carry on making videos, that's not the issue. The issue is what to talk about on my videos, because obviously I've talked about all the things I love. You all know I love my threads and my fabric and my specialty stitches and all of that. And just showing you the stuff that I've done in the month, just, I don't know, because I've already, as I said, I would have already written about it on my blog, so it feels a bit weird to talk. I'm like repeating myself over and over again. So if anybody has any ideas or things they would like me to talk about on blogs, any questions things that I can talk about on my vlog, stitching questions or things like that, or a topic you want me to discuss or something, I'm open to suggestions. Otherwise, as I say, I don't really know what my next video will be about or even when it will be up. I will say that I'm really enjoying my blog, which isn't to say that, you know, 6 months down the road I'll feel differently and I'll go back to vlogging or something. I don't know really. I'm not quite sure. Of course, the other thing is with my thread challenge, I'm not stashing anywhere near as much as I used to. I think this whole sort of cold turkey thing has worked. I have no reason to, I don't have any reason to buy any more stash for the rest of the year. Cross-stitching stash, as in thread and fabric stash. I've got all the threads I need for the projects I had planned this year. I mean, I have no excuse not to. You know, my thread collection, my hand-dyed thread collection is into the 4 figures, so I cannot possibly say that I do not have a particular thread that I need for a project. They are all there. The only stash that I'm having currently, obviously, are my subscriptions from Droji Designs, so I'm quite, when it comes to people, if there's any of you out there that are trying to not buy stash, not buy patterns, not buy threads, not buy fabric, I support you. Sometimes it's hard if you're trying not to, if you put yourself on a stash ban or a stash diet, it's very hard sometimes when you see lots of other people's stash and you see things that you really, really want. But actually, I find it much more satisfying to look at the things I already have and to try and use them in patterns that I love, so I find that quite helpful. So if you're having, you know, issues and you really want to break your stashing problem, then, you know, feel free to email me or message me or whatever, and I shall offer you my support. Failing that, I really should, you know, hire my sister out to people, because she's quite good for that too, telling you what you do and don't need. So, my plans for next month, as I say, video-wise I don't know. Stitching-wise, I am absolutely loving all the things that I have, all the plans I've got for my stitching this year. I'm really excited about it. I've just started plum pudding, as some of you know. I've got plans to start the Box of Delights Blackwork by Elizabeth Almond. I have plans to start a goldwork project this month. Lots of things that I'm really excited about. I just don't feel that I have the enthusiasm somehow to talk about them. I don't know. I can write about them on my blog, but talking about it just seems weird to me at the moment. I feel like I have nothing to say. I feel like I just want to hold up my work and just, you can just look at it and then we'll just move on, which does not make for very exciting videos. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Like I said, I'd appreciate any feedback you have on them. If you do want me to do a video on a specific topic, or if any of you have any sort of random stitching questions that I might be able to help you with, maybe I can do some sort of question and answer video. I don't know really. I'm kind of at a loss. So if anybody has any ideas out there, please do let me know. But that is all I have to say for the time being. So I will say thank you very much for watching. All of you people out there that still keep subscribing to my channel, even though I haven't been making as many videos as I did previously, and to all those people that follow me on Instagram, you know, and like my work, and all of you that message me, and all those lovely people. Thank you very much for your support. It does make stitching more interesting when you can share it with other people. So thank you to all of you, and happy stitching.